Hi everyone. In this lecture, we will look at data validation. In the data tab, we have data validation with us, and there are many options available here. Let's go through them one by one. The first thing I want to select is consumer, corporate, and home office. So we have three different business segments with us, and I want to say that in my entire column G, so not just in G1, but let me select the entire column G. We want to insert an option to the user so that they can only input these three values, either consumer, corporate, or home office. That means that G1 to G1000 is where the data validation will be applied, and the options given are I1 to I3, which is consumer, corporate, and home office. And we can click on save. And the moment you do that, a drop down appears in all these cells. And this means that I can simply click on the drop down and select the option that we want. But what if we insert something that is not allowed? Let's say I type A. It gives me a warning saying that the input must fall within the specified range. What we can also do is to go back to data validation and say that rather than giving a warning, it should reject the input. And this means that if a user tries to enter something else, it will not even permit the user. It will say that it is violating the data validation rule. So it depends on how you want to do this, if you want to give a soft warning or if you want to restrict the input altogether. Let's go back. We also have some help text that we can give. So I can say, please select segment. And this way, when the user comes back and if I select something correctly, it works. If I'm typing something incorrectly, rather than giving me a warning saying that it did not meet the criteria, which might be a little vague, it exactly tells the user that please select the segment from the options given to you, for example. So this is the most basic way of using the data validation. Now, sometimes you might not want to select the list from a range, in which case, let me do this in column K, first changing the color. So this time we go to data validation, and then rather than selecting the list from a range, I'm going to choose a list of items. This means that we can simply write consumer, corporate, and home office, save. Same drop down appears, and you're able to select the option. Now, both of these methods have their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, in the first one, it's dynamic. That means that if I change this to C to C, then the drop down option also changes. But if somebody deletes these values, then the drop down will not work anymore. In the case of the K column, it is not dependent on any list, which is great. But this also means that if you want to make a modification, you will have to go back to data validation, and change it here. Both of them have their own use cases, and I personally use both of them. So definitely try both of these out. Let's go forward. Going back to data validation, this time we will select number, and very simply we have an option to select numbers from 10 to 100, and we can also choose numbers that are less than, greater than, not between a certain number, and things like that. We have the option for text, which means that I can say that only that text input should be allowed, which is a valid email. And this is very smart. This means that if a user accidentally, rather than writing the email, so let's say I'm writing havishrao@gmail.com, which is correct. Let's say I forgot to write the email and accidentally I put in the name, it will give a warning saying that the input must be a valid email address. So it's very handy to have. Then we have date, which means that we can either ensure that somebody is inputting a valid date, and we can also control how the date is being put, which means that if we say after, and we will select 31st May 2021, this means that if I enter the 1st of June 2021, it gives me a warning saying that the input must be after 31st May 2021. Hold on, that did not work correctly. Let me do that once again. So we go back to data validation. All right, so here we can't write 31 May. It will have to be in a MMDD format. So it will have to be 0531. And as you can see, it is allowing the value. But if I put the 30th of May, it will give me a warning. Coming back, we also have the option for a checkbox, which means that we can choose checked and unchecked. So we can have true and false. Let me give you an example. So for checked, rather than using the default, which is true, like we had done earlier, we are going to write A. In unchecked, we are going to write B. This means that, just a moment, so data validation, and let me enter a checkbox where we have A and we have B. So we get a checkbox, and you notice that if I simply write equal to the checkbox, by selecting it is A, and by deselecting it is B. And finally, we also can write our own custom formulas. For example, we have mobile numbers, and we want to make sure that the number is exactly 10 digits. So in data validation, we can say that the custom formula is equal to the length of P2, which has to be exactly equal to 10. Press save. So if I write a number, it works. But if I put a number less or a number more, it automatically gives me a warning like this. This can be a slightly more advanced technique, but a very nice way of controlling how you get results by putting in your own custom formula.